The sun hung low over the golden fields of Montana, casting long shadows across the quiet countryside. Jack Dawson wiped the sweat from his brow as he leaned against the fence, gazing out at the endless stretch of farmland. His wife, Laura, was inside preparing dinner, the faint smell of baked potatoes drifting through the open kitchen window. It was a peaceful evening, the kind that made life in the small town feel almost perfect. But peace, as Jack would soon discover, could vanish in an instant. A sudden flash lit up the horizon, brighter than any lightning strike. Jack squinted, shielding his eyes with one hand. At first, he thought it might be a plane crashing or maybe a meteor falling from the sky. But then came the sound, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the ground beneath his boots. The horses in the nearby paddock whinnied nervously, their ears pinned back as they galloped toward the barn. Something wasn't right. Jack climbed onto the roof of his tractor to get a better view. That's when he saw them. 3 massive ships descending slowly from the clouds, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. They hovered silently above the field, their sleek metallic surfaces reflecting the last rays of sunlight. For a moment, Jack felt frozen, unsure whether to run, hide, or simply stare in awe. Then, with a soft hiss, the largest ship opened, and beings unlike anything Jack had ever imagined stepped out. They were tall, taller than any human, with elongated limbs and shimmering exoskeletons that seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit them. Their faces, if you could call them that, were smooth and featureless, save for 2 large, multifaceted eyes that glowed faintly green. Most unsettling of all was the way they moved, quick, precise, and eerily silent. Jack's heart raced, but instead of fear, he felt something else, an odd mix of curiosity and defiance. The leader of the group stopped a few feet away from Jack, tilting its head slightly as if studying him. Without warning, a voice echoed inside Jack's mind, cold and mechanical. "You are human. You will surrender your world." It wasn't spoken aloud, yet the words rang clear as day. Jack blinked, startled but not entirely surprised. He'd seen enough science fiction movies to know what was happening here. Instead of cowering, Jack took a step forward. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. Then, much to everyone's astonishment, including his own, he smiled. It wasn't forced or fake. It was the kind of easy grin he'd give a neighbor passing by on the road. The alien leader paused, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Behind it, the others shifted uneasily, clicking their mandibles together in what sounded like confusion. Laura emerged from the house just then, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw the scene unfolding in the field, she gasped but didn't scream. Instead, she hurried to Jack's side, standing close enough to let him know she wasn't leaving. To the alien's bewilderment, she too wore a calm expression, even managing a small smile herself. The leader tilted its head again, clearly perplexed. Its people exchanged rapid clicks and chirps, their version of whispered conversation. One of them pointed at Jack and Laura, gesturing emphatically while mimicking the act of baring teeth. The leader held up a clawed hand, silencing its subordinate. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it turned back to Jack and spoke once more. "Your behavior is unexpected. Explain." Jack glanced at Laura, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, he replied, "We're not looking for trouble. We just want to talk." His voice was steady, though his knees felt like jelly. The alien didn't respond immediately, but its glowing eyes softened ever so slightly. Whatever was going to happen next, Jack knew one thing for sure. Humanity's fight wasn't over yet. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Montana sky in shades of orange and purple, word of the alien arrival spread quickly. Within hours, a convoy of vehicles arrived at the edge of the Dawson farm. Among them was Emily Ross, a soft-spoken anthropologist with a sharp mind and a knack for solving puzzles. She had been studying ancient rock carvings in the nearby hills when she heard about the strange ships descending over Jack's fields. Her assistant, Kevin, a wiry young man with glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, trailed behind her, clutching a notebook filled with scribbled observations. Emily approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the scene before her. The aliens stood motionless, their glowing forms casting an eerie light across the darkening field. Jack and Laura were still there, standing side by side, their calm demeanor somehow holding the tension at bay. Emily introduced herself quietly, explaining that she might be able to help communicate with the visitors. Jack nodded gratefully, stepping aside to let her take the lead. Standing a few feet from the alien leader, Emily raised her hand slowly, mimicking Jack's earlier gesture of peace. Then, using careful movements, she began drawing symbols in the dirt with her finger, simple shapes like circles, lines, and spirals. These were patterns she'd seen in ancient petroglyphs scattered across the region, ones that seemed to echo universal themes of connection and understanding. To her surprise, the alien leader tilted its head again, this time with what looked like curiosity rather than suspicion. Kevin whispered excitedly, "They're watching. They're actually paying attention." Emily ignored him, focusing instead on the subtle reactions of the aliens. One of them clicked its mandibles and pointed at her drawings, while another bent down to examine them more closely. It was clear they recognized something familiar in the symbols, though none of them responded directly. Meanwhile, Laura noticed something peculiar. Whenever one of the humans smiled or laughed nervously, the aliens reacted with visible confusion. Their leader, Zixer, seemed particularly intrigued, tilting his head back and forth as if trying to decipher some hidden meaning. Laura leaned toward Emily and murmured, "I think they don't understand why we're smiling." Emily frowned thoughtfully. "Maybe it's cultural. For us, smiling is a way to show friendliness or reassurance. But for them..." She glanced at the insect-like creatures, their smooth, expressionless faces giving nothing away. "Maybe it means something completely different." Zixer interrupted their conversation with another telepathic message. "Your gestures are primitive, yet your smiles, they are unusual. Explain." His tone was less demanding now, tinged with genuine interest. Taking a deep breath, Emily tried to explain. "Smiling is how we connect with each other. It shows trust, even in difficult times. We smile because it helps us stay strong." As she spoke, Kevin flashed a nervous grin, eliciting a series of rapid clicks from the aliens. Zixer studied him intently, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. To demonstrate, Jack stepped forward again, offering a wide, friendly smile. Laura followed suit, her expression warm and inviting. For a moment, the field fell silent, save for the distant chirping of crickets. Then one of the smaller aliens made a sound that resembled a cough, or perhaps a laugh. The others turned to look at it, their body language shifting in ways that suggested surprise. Zixer addressed Emily once more. "This behavior, it is not logical. Why do you expose your teeth? Among my kind, such an act signifies aggression or submission." Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "For us, showing our teeth isn't about fighting or surrendering. It's about hope. Even when things seem bad, we smile to remind ourselves, and each other, that we can get through it together." The alien leader didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to his companions, exchanging a series of clicks and chirps. Whatever they were discussing, it was clear they were struggling to comprehend human emotions. Finally, Zixer faced Emily again. "You will come with us," he said firmly. "We must learn more." Before anyone could protest, several aliens moved swiftly, surrounding Jack, Laura, Emily, and Kevin. In seconds, they were lifted off the ground and carried toward the largest ship. The last thing Emily saw before being pulled inside was the worried faces of the townspeople gathered at the edge of the field. Despite the fear gnawing at her stomach, she managed a small smile, hoping it would reassure them, and maybe even the aliens, that everything would be okay. Inside the alien ship, The air felt different, cool and metallic, with a faint hum that vibrated through the floor. Jack, Laura, Emily, and Kevin stood in a large, dimly lit chamber surrounded by towering walls of smooth, shifting surfaces. The aliens moved silently around them, their glowing eyes scanning every movement. Despite the strange surroundings, Jack couldn't help but notice how calm Laura seemed. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze, her quiet strength keeping him grounded. Zixer, the leader, gestured for two of his soldiers to escort the humans to another part of the ship. One of the soldiers, Klarn, stepped forward. He was slightly shorter than Zixer, but carried an air of authority. His sharp claws clicked against the floor as he motioned for the group to follow. Emily hesitated for a moment, glancing at Kevin, who looked pale and uneasy. "It's okay," she whispered. "Just stay close." The group was led down a narrow corridor that seemed to pulse faintly with light. Every step they took felt like walking into the unknown. Yet Jack managed to keep a small smile on his face. It wasn't bravado. It was more about refusing to let fear take over. Klarn noticed this and tilted his head curiously, clicking his mandibles in what might have been irritation or confusion. Jack caught his gaze and nodded politely, earning an even sharper click in response. They arrived at a circular room filled with strange devices that hummed softly. Vrila, one of the scientists, waited there. Her exoskeleton shimmered with a softer glow compared to the others, and her movements were deliberate, almost cautious. Zixer addressed her telepathically, instructing her to study the human's behavior. Vrila turned her attention to the captives, her multifaceted eyes flickering as she observed them closely. Emily tried to break the tension. "We're not your enemies," she said, her voice steady despite the situation. "We just want to understand each other." Vrila didn't respond immediately, instead activating one of the machines. A beam of light scanned over the group, causing Kevin to flinch. "What is that thing doing?" he muttered under his breath. Laura stepped forward, her expression calm. "If you're trying to learn about us, maybe we can help. Ask us questions." Vrila paused, tilting her head slightly. Then, in a series of clicks and chirps, she communicated with Zixer. Moments later, a telepathic message echoed in their minds. "You will explain your smiles." Kevin laughed nervously, earning another sharp click from Klarn. "Sorry," he stammered. "It's just, we smile because it's natural. It's how we show we're not afraid, even when things are tough." Vrila studied him intently, then turned to Laura. "Your smiles, they do not signify aggression, yet you bare your teeth. Why?" Laura thought for a moment before answering. "For us, smiling isn't about showing teeth, it's about showing heart. It's a way of saying, we're still here, and we're going to keep going." She offered a warm smile to demonstrate, though Vrila remained impassive. As the questioning continued, Jack noticed Klarn growing increasingly agitated. The soldier paced back and forth, occasionally clicking angrily at his companions. Finally, he stepped closer to Jack, his glowing eyes fixed on him. "This behavior, it is unnatural. You should be afraid. You should submit." Jack met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe where you come from, fear is all you know. But for us, being afraid doesn't mean giving up. Smiling reminds us that we're stronger together." To emphasize his point, he grinned widely, holding Klarn's stare. For a split second, Klarn's mandibles twitched, as if he were suppressing some unfamiliar emotion. Meanwhile, Emily noticed something peculiar about the symbols displayed on one of the machines. They resembled patterns she'd seen in ancient carvings. She pointed them out to Kevin, who scribbled notes furiously. "There's a connection," she murmured. "These symbols, they are too similar to be a coincidence." Klarn interrupted their whispered conversation with a sharp command. "Silence," he snapped, his tone harsh even in telepathic form. But as he glared at Emily, she simply smiled back at him. This time, the gesture seemed to catch him off guard. He hesitated, his glowing eyes narrowing, as if trying to process what he was seeing. By the time the session ended, the humans were escorted back to their holding area. As they walked, Jack glanced at Clarn and offered another small smile. The alien's mandibles twitched again, but this time, he didn't click angrily. Instead, he watched Jack with an unreadable expression, as if seeing humans in a new light. Whatever barriers existed between them, Jack thought, maybe a simple smile could start breaking them down, one toothy grin at a time. Back on Earth, news of the alien invasion spread faster than wildfire. Social media exploded with videos and photos of the glowing ships hovering over Montana. People everywhere were glued to their screens, watching live updates from reporters who stood miles away, speculating about what was happening inside the alien vessel. Fear rippled through cities, but so did determination. In New York City, firefighter Ben Carter was among those leading the charge to prepare for whatever came next. Ben wasn't one for speeches or grand gestures, but he had a knack for rallying people together. When the call went out for volunteers to help organize defenses, dozens of ordinary citizens showed up. Shopkeepers, teachers, students, even retirees. They gathered in a park near the East River, rolling up their sleeves and getting to work. Some built makeshift barricades using scrap metal and wooden planks, while others sorted supplies like food, water, and first aid kits. The mood was tense but oddly hopeful, thanks in large part to Ben's steady presence. "All right, folks," Ben called out, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. "We don't know what these aliens want yet, but we're not sitting around waiting to find out. Let's show them we're ready." He flashed a wide grin as he spoke, his white teeth gleaming against his soot-streaked face. It wasn't bravado, it was reassurance. And it worked. The volunteers laughed nervously, mirroring his smile as they got back to work. Across town, news crews captured every moment. One reporter zoomed in on a group of teenagers painting bright yellow smiles onto pieces of plywood meant to reinforce windows. "Why are you doing that?" the reporter asked, pointing at the cheerful faces. One of the teens shrugged, smearing paint on her cheek accidentally. "If aliens see us smiling, maybe they'll think twice about messing with us," she said with a laugh. Her friends joined in, holding up their painted boards and grinning wildly for the camera. The footage went viral within minutes, sparking debates online about whether humanity's smiles were an act of defiance or just plain crazy. Up in space, aboard the alien ship, Zixer watched the broadcasts with growing unease. Images of humans laughing, working together, and flashing toothy grins filled the screens in his command center. Vrela stood beside him, analyzing the data streaming in. "Their behavior is inconsistent," she reported. "Even under threat, they display this unusual expression repeatedly." Zixer's glowing eyes narrowed. "It is illogical. Fear should paralyze them. Yet they act as if they have no reason to fear. What purpose does this serve?" Clarn, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Perhaps it is a tactic, a way to confuse us. Or perhaps—" He hesitated, glancing at Jack, Laura, Emily, and Kevin, who were still being held nearby. "Perhaps it is something more." Zixer turned to look at the humans. Jack caught his gaze and offered another easy smile, as if to say, "You still don't get it. Do you, Zixer's mandibles twitched, a sign of irritation, or maybe curiosity. Whatever the case, he couldn't deny that the human's behavior was unlike anything his species had encountered before. Meanwhile, back in New York, Ben led a team of volunteers toward the outskirts of the city. Reports suggested smaller alien ships were scouting the area, testing humanity's resolve. Armed with nothing but courage and improvised tools, the group positioned themselves behind barricades, ready to defend their home. As the alien scouts approached, shining beams of light scanning the ground below, Ben raised a hand to signal his team to hold steady. When the aliens fired a warning shot, sending a burst of energy sizzling past their heads, panic threatened to break out. But Ben didn't flinch. Instead, he grinned broadly, raising a fist in defiance. "Come on, then," he shouted. "Is that all you've got?" His teammates erupted into cheers, some of them laughing despite the danger. On camera, their smiles looked almost reckless, but to anyone watching, they also looked unstoppable. High above, Zixer leaned closer to the screen, his glowing eyes fixed on Ben's face. For the first time since arriving on Earth, doubt crept into his mind. Humanity's smiles weren't just strange. They were powerful. They conveyed strength, unity, and an unshakable belief in survival. And that, Zixer realized, might be the most dangerous weapon of all. The tension between the humans and the aliens reached a breaking point one fateful night. Outside the alien ship, military forces had gathered, their tanks and armored vehicles forming a perimeter around the Dawson farm. Spotlights illuminated the area, casting long shadows across the fields. Inside the ship, Jack, Laura, Emily, and Kevin remained under close watch, unsure of what was happening beyond the metallic walls. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire erupted in the distance. Explosions lit up the sky, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Clarn barked orders to his fellow soldiers, his mandibles clicking furiously as he prepared for battle. Zixer appeared moments later, his glowing eyes scanning the group of humans. "Your people attack us," he said through telepathic communication, his tone colder than before. "Explain this." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "We didn't plan this. There are factions among us who don't trust you. They're acting out of fear." She paused, then added, "But not all humans think like that. Some of us still believe we can find common ground." Zixer's eyes narrowed, but he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Vrila, who had been quietly observing the situation. "What do your studies show? Can these humans be trusted?" Vrila hesitated before answering. "Their smiles. They are genuine. Their emotions suggest they seek cooperation, not conflict. But I cannot predict the actions of their leaders." Before Zixer could reply, another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. Jack instinctively grabbed Laura's hand, pulling her closer as debris rained down from the ceiling. Despite the danger, Laura managed a small smile. "We'll get through this," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Amidst the chaos, Emily noticed something important. A control panel near the wall that resembled the symbols she'd seen earlier. She nudged Kevin, pointing it out discreetly. "Keep them distracted," she murmured, while Kevin engaged Clarn in conversation. Stammering nervously about Earth customs, Emily moved toward the panel. Her hands trembled as she pressed random buttons, hoping to disable part of the ship's defenses. Outside, Ben Carter led a daring charge alongside a group of volunteers. Armed with makeshift weapons and sheer determination, they pushed forward, determined to rescue the captives. As bullets whizzed past and smoke filled the air, Ben grinned wildly, shouting encouragement to his team. "Stay strong. We got this." His unwavering optimism inspired those around him, even as the odds seemed insurmountable. Back inside the ship, Emily's efforts paid off. A section of the hull began to open, creating an escape route. "Now," she shouted, grabbing Kevin's arm. Jack and Laura followed closely behind as they sprinted toward the opening. Clarn roared in frustration, giving chase, but Zixer held up a clawed hand to stop him. "Let them go," he commanded, his voice firm. "This is not over." The group emerged into the cool night air, greeted by cheers from the volunteers below. Ben rushed to meet them, his face smeared with soot, but his smile as bright as ever. "You made it," he exclaimed, clapping Jack on the shoulder. "Thought we have to blow the whole ship apart to save you." As the humans regrouped, Zixer watched from the ship's observation deck. He saw how they celebrated their victory, laughing and smiling despite the destruction around them. For the first time, he questioned his mission. Was conquering Earth truly worth the cost? These humans, with their strange smiles and unyielding spirit, were unlike anything his species had encountered before. Later that evening, as the dust settled and the fighting subsided, Zixer called for a ceasefire. He addressed the human leaders, represented by Jack and Emily, proposing negotiations. "We came seeking refuge," he admitted, his telepathic voice softer now. "Our planet is dying. We thought yours would be easy to claim. But now, I see we underestimated you." Jack nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "We've all got struggles. Maybe we can help each other instead of fighting." Emily stepped forward, holding up a hand-drawn symbol she'd sketched during her captivity. "These patterns prove we share a connection. Our ancestors might have crossed paths long ago. That's why we understand each other, even when it feels impossible." For the first time, Zixer tilted his head in what looked like agreement. Perhaps there was a way forward, not through force, but through cooperation. And as the two groups began to talk, tentative smiles appeared on both sides, bridging the gap between worlds. The negotiations took place in a large tent set up near the Dawson farm. Inside, the air was thick with tension, but also with a fragile sense of hope. Jack and Emily sat on one side of a long table, their faces calm but alert. Across from them, Zixer and several of his officers occupied the other side, their glowing forms casting an eerie light over the makeshift meeting space. Human military leaders and scientists joined Jack and Emily, while Vrila and Klarn stood silently behind Zixer, observing every move. "We are not here to conquer," Zixer began, his telepathic voice steady but less commanding than before. "Our planet is dying. We sought a new home, believing your species would be weak and easily controlled. But we were wrong." He paused, tilting his head slightly as if struggling to find the right words. "Your smiles, they confuse us. They show strength where we expected fear." Emily leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Smiling isn't just about being happy. It's about refusing to give up, even when things seem impossible. That's who we are. We adapt, we survive, and we help each other." Jack nodded, adding, "And maybe that's something we can teach you. Instead of fighting, we could work together. You need a new home, and we have resources to share, if you're willing to coexist peacefully." Zixer's multifaceted eyes flickered as he processed their words. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Vrila stepped forward, addressing the humans for the first time. "Your symbols, the ones you showed us, they match patterns found in our ancient texts. This suggests our ancestors may have crossed paths long ago. Perhaps this connection means something." A murmur rippled through the human side of the table. One of the scientists whispered excitedly, "If their culture has roots tied to ours, it could explain why they're intrigued by our emotions." Klarn shifted uncomfortably, his mandibles clicking softly. He had grown quieter since the escape attempt, his earlier aggression replaced by uncertainty. When he finally spoke, his telepathic voice carried a note of hesitation. "You say your smiles mean hope, but how do we know this is not a trick? How do we trust you?" Ben Carter, who had joined the meeting, stood up slowly. His broad frame filled the room, and his confident demeanor commanded attention. "Trust isn't given, it's earned. And we're willing to start earning yours. But you'll have to meet us halfway." He grinned, his teeth flashing in the dim light. See, still smiling. To everyone's surprise, Klarn didn't react with anger. Instead, he tilted his head, studying Ben carefully. For the first time, his glowing eyes softened slightly, as if he were seeing humans in a new light. As the discussions continued, both sides began to open up. The humans shared stories of resilience, how they had faced wars, natural disasters, and hardships throughout history, always finding ways to rebuild. In turn, the aliens revealed glimpses of their own struggles. A dying planet ravaged by environmental collapse, forcing them to flee in desperation. The more they talked, the more similarities emerged between the two species. By the end of the meeting, Zixer made a bold proposal. "We will withdraw our forces and cease all hostilities. In exchange, we ask for your help in repairing our ships and locating a suitable area for temporary settlement. If this arrangement works, Perhaps we can build a future together." The human leaders exchanged glances, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, Jack extended his hand across the table. "Deal," he said firmly. Sixer hesitated, then reached out with one clawed appendage, gently touching Jack's palm. It wasn't quite a handshake, but it was a start. Outside, the news spread quickly. Soldiers lowered their weapons, and volunteers cheered as the alien ships powered down. Laura hugged Emily tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." In the days that followed, humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing tools, knowledge, and laughter. Slowly, smiles became a universal language, a sign of goodwill that transcended their differences. Even Clarn, once so hostile, began mimicking the gesture, though his attempts looked more like bared teeth than genuine grins. Still, the effort brought chuckles from the humans, bridging the gap between them. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace, not just on Earth, but in the hearts of two very different species learning to trust each other, one smile at a time. Months passed, and Earth began to adapt to its new reality. The aliens, now known as the Zrinthians, established temporary settlements in remote areas, working closely with human teams to rebuild what had been damaged during the initial conflict. Fields once scared by explosions were replanted, and towns destroyed in skirmishes were slowly reconstructed. It was a fragile partnership, but it was growing stronger every day. Jack and Laura became unofficial ambassadors for their small Montana town, often visiting the nearby Zrinthian camp to ensure smooth cooperation. They brought fresh bread and homemade pies, which the aliens found fascinating. Though the Zrinthians didn't eat human food, they appreciated the gesture, mimicking smiles as a way of saying thank you. Laura took pride in teaching them how to smile more naturally, her patience earning her the nickname Smile Teacher among the locals. Emily and Vrila continued their joint research, delving deeper into the shared symbols that hinted at a long-lost connection between their species. They spent hours poring over ancient texts and carvings, piecing together fragments of history. One evening, while examining a weathered stone tablet, Emily pointed to a series of markings that resembled constellations. "These patterns match coordinates in space," she said excitedly. "Your ancestors might have traveled here thousands of years ago." Vrila's glowing eyes widened. "If this is true, then our peoples are more connected than we realized." She clicked her mandibles thoughtfully, then added, "Perhaps this explains why your emotions resonate with us, even though we do not fully understand them." Meanwhile, Ben Carter remained a pillar of strength in New York City. He organized community events where humans and Zrinthians could interact, sharing stories and traditions. At one gathering, Ben taught a group of Zrinthian soldiers how to play soccer, a game they initially struggled to grasp. But when one of them accidentally kicked the ball into the goal, the entire crowd erupted in cheers. Even Clarn, who had grown friendlier over time, joined in, his awkward attempts at running drawing laughter from everyone. Kevin, Emily's assistant, discovered a knack for language translation. Using recordings of Zrinthian clicks and chirps, he created a rudimentary dictionary to help bridge the communication gap. His efforts paid off when he successfully translated a message from Sixer thanking humanity for their cooperation. The announcement was broadcast worldwide, bringing tears of relief to millions. As trust grew, so did understanding. Humans learned that Zrinthian society valued logic above all else, which was why they struggled to comprehend emotions like joy or hope. In turn, the Zrinthians came to admire human resilience, the ability to find light even in the darkest moments. Smiling, once seen as bizarre or threatening, became a symbol of unity. Zixer himself practiced it daily, though his version still looked a bit stiff. Progress takes time, Jack joked when he saw the alien leader's attempt. One afternoon, Laura sat with Vrila near the edge of the Zrinthian settlement. The scientist watched curiously as Laura sketched flowers in the dirt, humming softly to herself. "Why do you create these images?" Vrila asked. "It makes me happy," Laura replied simply. Sometimes happiness is about doing small things that bring comfort. Vrila considered this, then used one of her claws to draw a shape beside Laura's flowers. It was clumsy but recognizable. A star. Laura smiled warmly, patting Vrila's arm. "You're getting better at this," she said. For the first time, Vrila attempted a genuine smile, her mandibles curling slightly upward. It wasn't perfect, but it was heartfelt. By winter, the collaboration had transformed communities across the globe. Farmers worked alongside Corinthians to improve crop yields, engineers shared technology to create sustainable energy solutions, and artists painted murals depicting humans and aliens standing side by side. Even skeptics who had once feared the invaders began to see them as partners rather than threats. Zixer addressed the world during a global summit, his telepathic voice filled with gratitude. "We came seeking survival, but we found something greater: hope. Together, we can build a future where both our species thrive." As cameras captured the moment, Jack stood beside him, offering a wide, reassuring smile. The image went viral, becoming a symbol of peace and cooperation. For the first time in history, two vastly different species have found common ground. And as snow began to fall over Montana, blanketing fields and ships alike, it was clear that smiles, not weapons, had paved the way to a brighter tomorrow. Years passed, and the bond between humans and Corinthians grew stronger with each passing season. The once strange sight of towering insect-like aliens walking through human towns became ordinary, even comforting. Smiles, once a mystery to the Corinthians, had become a universal language, a gesture that transcended words and united two very different species. Children played together in parks, their laughter blending seamlessly as they chased after balls or drew pictures in the dirt. Farmers shared tools and techniques with Corinthian engineers, creating farms that produced more food than ever before. Even the skies seemed brighter, filled with both human planes and sleek Corinthian ships flying side by side. Laura Dawson spent her days teaching Corinthian children how to smile. It wasn't easy. Some of them still struggled to mimic the curve of human lips. But she was patient. "It's not about perfection," she would say, placing a gentle hand on their smooth exoskeletons. "It's about feeling happy inside." One young Corinthian named Kryle, who had been born on Earth, finally managed a wobbly grin one afternoon. Laura clapped her hands in delight, and Kryle tilted his head proudly, clicking his mandibles in excitement. For Laura, moments like these were proof that change was possible, no matter how impossible it seemed at first. Jack, meanwhile, worked closely with Zixer to establish global policies that ensured fairness for both species. They traveled around the world, visiting cities and villages where humans and Corinthians lived together. At each stop, Jack introduced Zixer to local leaders, often starting meetings with a warm handshake, or its closest Corinthian equivalent. Zixer, who had once viewed humans as unpredictable and illogical, now marveled at their capacity for kindness and creativity. He even began telling stories of his own transformation during speeches, using telepathic messages to describe how a simple smile had changed everything. Emily and Vrila continued their groundbreaking research, uncovering more evidence of the ancient connection between their peoples. Their work led to the discovery of an old star map etched into a cave wall deep in the Australian outback. The map revealed coordinates pointing to a distant planet rich in resources that could help the Corinthians rebuild their dying homeworld. When they presented their findings to a joint council of human and Corinthian leaders, the room erupted in applause. It was a chance for both species to give back, to repay the trust and friendship that had grown over the years. Then Carter retired from firefighting but remained active in promoting peace. He organized annual festivals celebrating the alliance between humans and Corinthians, complete with music, food, and games. One year, he convinced Clarn to participate in a pie-eating contest. Though Clarn didn't actually eat the pie, he just held it up to his mouthplate. The crowd roared with laughter when Ben playfully smeared whipped cream on his shiny exoskeleton. Clarn responded with a wide, toothy grin, the best attempt at a smile anyone had ever seen from him. As time went on, the smiles exchanged between humans and Trinthians became less about teaching and more about sharing joy. In New York City, Mia, the same young woman who had once asked Ben if they'd be okay, now ran a community center where humans and Trinthians gathered to learn from one another. She taught Trinthians how to bake cookies while they showed her how to build intricate sculptures out of light. Together, they created something entirely new, a fusion of cultures that honored both traditions. One evening, under a sky dotted with stars, Sixer stood beside Jack and Laura outside the Dawson farmhouse. The field stretched endlessly before them, bathed in silver moonlight. "Your smiles have taught us much," Sixer said softly, his glowing eyes reflecting the night sky. "They remind us that survival is not enough. We must also find meaning and joy in our lives." Jack nodded, smiling as he always did. "And you've reminded us that we're stronger when we work together. No matter how different we seem, we're all just trying to make it through this big, crazy universe." Sixer raised one clawed hand in a gesture of gratitude, mirroring the human habit of waving goodbye. Then he turned and walked back toward the settlement, his silhouette blending with those of his people. As he disappeared into the darkness, Laura wrapped her arms around Jack, gazing up at the stars. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Jack replied. "But wherever they go, I think they'll carry a piece of us with them, just like we'll carry a piece of them." High above, a single Zrinthian ship lifted off, its engines humming softly as it ascended into the heavens. On board, Vrilla watched Earth shrink behind her, a faint smile lingering on her face. Across the galaxy, hope and smiles would continue to shine, lighting the way for whatever came next.